Okay.
Is
When it's-
on.
We use those for our.
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you for everyone who is in attendance today. And we do have the first presenter already online. So we're going to call the meeting to order and go ahead and let USI Consultants do their presentation. And just for anyone who views this recording or is watching it online, KEDCO has brought us the possibility of looking into a project in the northern part of Kosciuszko County, and we are doing nothing but fact gathering at this point. So now we will turn it over to Beth Johnson, who is representing USI Consultants. Good afternoon, Beth.
Hello. We have probably 3 or 4 others that are joining us. Our time slot is 1:45, so I'm just a little bit early. But I am going to try to share my screen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Can you allow me to share my screen? It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
She's working on it, Beth.
Okay.
In the meantime, do you know who's going to be joining us?
Yep. Phil Beer, USI President, Corey Daly, our project manager, Jody Copeland, she's our assistant project manager, and then Ben Beer may be able to join, and he's our client or community liaison. I am the client liaison.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We're having a technical difficulty making you the host, so hold on.
Hey Beth, you gotta go back to the settings of the meeting, is that correct?
We need a high school student.
So when you click on the carrot,
Yeah. Right. Can you make a request, Beth?
Maybe.
Yes. 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 We're getting there.
Okay.
Yes.
oh, yeah.
Okay, try it now.
There we go. Yep.
Ah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
We do have a quorum, right? Because we've got more than, we're just missing Jan and Dan. But that, we have 3 out of the 5, so we have a quorum. Okay.
Dan indicated he was going to join virtually.
He was going to try. No, it was,
He's not out there waiting to be let in. Okay. Just didn't want to ignore him if he is. Okay. Yes, we have to.
yeah.
3 out of 5. Beth, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and start.
I think she's waiting for some participants on her end. Well, no, I know. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually not leading any of the conversation today, so I let the others know that we're live as soon as they can hop on, but we've got 4 minutes. So hopefully they hop on sooner than later.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Hi, Phil.
Howdy, can you hear me?
Yep.
I gotta change the name. There.
Phil, can you see what I'm sharing as well?
Yes, I can.
Okay. If I can ask, who all do we have in the room for you guys? Kosciuszko.
Certainly. I'm Joni Truax, President, Redevelopment Commission, and I serve on the County Council.
Then Doug Haynes, Vice President of the Redevelopment Commission.
Mike Metzger. Brad Johnson. I'm just a school board rep on this board.
He's more than just a school board rep.
We have two other members that are unable to attend.
And
Hold it down. I'm Lori Shipman. I'm filling in for Alan Teo with KEDCO.
then we have members of the press, and we have our highway superintendent, I almost made you something else, area plan commissioner. I almost just gave you, I was going to make you a surveyor for just a second there, and I thought, no, that's not it. Sorry about that. And our county administrator and our county auditor are also in attendance.
Terrific. Terrific. Well, hopefully the other three members of our team will be joining us here in just a few seconds. I told them to jump on at 1:44. And then we will quickly move through our presentation. By the way, my name is Phil Beer, and I'm president of USI, what you can see on the screen. So, and long time, well, grew up in Kosciuszko. A lot of family up there. And here they come.
Hello,
Hello.
Okay, Corey's on. Okay.
how's it going?
Perfect. And the only one else we're waiting on is my brother Ben. So I'll just go ahead and start for us since the main group is here. Like I said, my name is Phil Beer. I'm the president of USI. I would be the principal in charge for this project. We have online with us today. We have Corey Daly, who would be the project manager. Corey heads up our planning group here at USI. his assistant project manager on this would be Jody Kovalents, who has recently come on board with us, and we're thrilled to have her as part of this group. My brother Ben Beer would be a community liaison, and I'll explain a little bit more about that, what that would involve. And then we have Beth Johnson, who is our client liaison on here as well. And so that, as an introduction, that's who we are, who would be the main people involved in this project. And there's obviously others within the scope that we or the letter of interest that we sent out that shows all the members of our team. To give you guys some background, and some of you might recognize my last name, we have a very long history in Kosciuszko County. USI Consultants has been doing work for Kosciuszko since 1996 with significant projects throughout the entire county, for the city of Warsaw, for the town of Melford, for the town of Syracuse. I grew up in the Melford area, and so did obviously Ben. And we have had a lot of experience already with the County Road 1300 North project, helping the county highway and the commissioners get funding for the tracks project. We developed the original study for that NDOT used for the tracks program. We've done projects along County Road 1300 North, such as County Road 100 East when the new elevator came in years ago. We redid Kern Road as part of this along there as well to provide the school a better ingress and egress, and had worked also with Pollywood on trying to develop better access for them as well. So that's just some of the numerous projects we've been involved with. And we've worked with Steve Moriarty in the highway department for years, and continue to work with them. And like I said, our background, we feel, is second to none as far as our knowledge of the area and what's going on. I mean, there are significant number of relatives that live along County Road 1300 North, which would be a nice thing to be able to work with them, which we have in the past, buying right away from them, things like that, and such. So with that introduction, kind of giving you a background of where USI is and what we've done for the county and different municipalities there, I just want to turn it over to Corey, and he will kind of go through our LOI as far as what next steps would be. So Corey?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. How's everybody doing today? My name's Corey Daly, as Phil mentioned. I am the Community and Design Manager here at USI. We've done a lot of great work here. I know I was personally involved with some trail work up in Syracuse, Wawasee, and a few other places. This is exciting, and I just wanted to spend a few minutes, because I know we'd like to get to some questions and answer and conversation. But I wanted to spend just a few minutes going over what we think would be a great process to follow with you to help you get from this bigger vision and some general ideas down to a final concept that you can then take and implement. So the graphic on the screen right now is also in our proposal. Basically summarizes what I like to call the thought funnel that we would like to work you through. And it would basically start with asking a lot of questions, having good conversations, trying to vet what you want to see happen along the corridor, what the limits of the corridor should be for the study, what the primary focus areas should be, and then start to slowly, over the course of a couple of conversations, narrow that down into a final vision for what the corridor could become and what you want to have happen there. We think with all the things happening in the area, and you've got, abutting TIF districts and all kinds of great opportunities in the area, we think that having that broader conversation first to help really kind of solidify what the initial ideas are will help fine-tune the initial concept that then can be turned into some real plans that on how you move forward. So the graphic on the right-hand side of the screen right now is an example of a project that we did in Huntertown, Indiana. And this is kind of what I would consider midstream in the process. We had the initial conversation with the client. We took some of those ideas and we put them down on the map, and we drew them out, and we started to get these big, what I call bubble ideas on the map. So that would kind of represent the first couple of steps that we have in the process we outlined in our proposal. If it gets us to that point where we have at least some spatial diagramming done to be able to refine that into some concepts. Flipping to the next slide, I wanted to show you and explain, this is what happened at the end of the process. And this was a light and quick process with the town of Huntertown. But we took that initial concept map and we turned it into some real ideas that they could then take and start to break out into projects and figure out how they would apply local funding, how they could, even overlay TIF districts in their historic downtown. So the image on the left-hand side of the screen is the concept, I call it the concept rendering. It was a very high level color rendering of some of those big ideas that came out of that map that you just saw previously. So this is what some of the end results of those conversations were. The graphics on the right-hand side, we're taking one of their big projects, which in this case was called the Gump Road Trail, and helping them visualize how that could look in the future. And this is just a broad idea, a broad brushstroke idea, but it's enough to get people excited. It's enough to get people to latch onto it and say, wow, we really want this to happen. It also gives them materials to take if they wanted to go after grant funding or other sources. So they're really good tools that they can use now coming out of the plan to help develop their ideas and concepts and make them reality. The other part of that plan that we did for them was help them kind of identify what the logical next steps would be. That's going to look different for you all because this was a downtown study in a small town. You have a little bit broader area to start to look at to begin with. But at the end result should be the same. We walk away from the plan with some great graphics, some nice ideas that you have some consensus around, and then those next steps. With that, I think, I know we were trying to hold this to 15 minutes, but we wanted to open it up just for general discussion and questions from you guys and see how we could help answer anything that you might have on your mind right now.
Does anyone have any questions?
So the length of the process is something close to what, 180 days, is that right?
Yeah, we're looking, I'd say a comfortable fit would be about 9 months to get from those initial discussions down to what I would consider a final plan. We can move faster if you wanted to move faster, but in my experience, it's hard to move much faster than that by the time you get meetings coordinated and schedules and have the conversations, and then we go back and do some heavy lifting on some of the work and the things that we heard. So I would recommend around a 9-month target. We could go a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on what you're comfortable with. So,
I would anticipate that a lot of the opportunities for studies such as this are in larger metropolitan areas, or as you referenced, Huntertown. What's been your experience in rural agricultural settings? And along with that question, then, how do you help manage the narrative with private property owners as it relates to a project like this?
So I've had quite a bit of experience with comprehensive planning and economic development in rural communities. I've worked in Rush County, I've worked in Shelby County, worked in Jennings County, all in Indiana. A lot of it depends on what you're going to be. Those initial conversations are really going to kind of frame what those important topics are. So for the plan itself, each rural area has its own unique set of distinct advantages and opportunities that are identified from the conversation. A lot of them we know are going to revolve around agriculture and keeping the rural character of the area, but also when you're talking about economic development, you need to understand where the true economic development opportunities lie. In terms of property owner conversations, that's literally just a conversation with the people that are going to be most impacted. And A lot of times that falls on the shoulders of the committee or the locals that have the relationships, but we're happy to sit down with you and have conversations or discussions about what each individual property might look like or what each individual property owner might be interested in. There's going to be some big topics that come out of the conversation in our experience in rural communities. You've got, if you haven't had them already, you've got solar, you've got wind, you've got all these big green energy infrastructure ideas that are really divisive. If we can, unless that's a huge component of what you want to do with the economic development there, we try to avoid those, parcel them out as kind of parking lot conversations with the interested parties and move those to a different forum and keep the plan away from that if you can. If it's going to be a key topic, we hit them head on and we go out and we have the discussions with people. At the beginning of this, it really is about conversations, and it's more about listening to what people's concerns are than it is us talking and presenting. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Well, if I might kind of also kind of piggyback on top of that conversation, one of the aspects that we have because of our connection with Kosciuszko County, with the town of Melford, with the town of Syracuse, we have personal connections with so many individuals. Working with Steve when we did the initial planning kind of for the extension of County Road 1300 North, working with the high school, working with Doug Roosh with the town of Melford, and Dan Brown from Melford. All of these individuals, talking with Doug Rassi at Pollywood and the project there. We know these individuals, and obviously there's several along the corridor that we know quite well as too, and to be able to sit down and see what they want to talk with, that we believe is an advantage of ours, that if selected, being able to have those conversations and get in to see people, sit down with them at their coffee table and have conversations. And that's one of the things myself and my brother Ben will help facilitate as if selected for this.
Did you provide a copy of the PowerPoint that you just presented? Did you provide that to us?
I believe all of that just came out of our letter of interest. I mean, that was just
We have this.
but we're more than happy to send that as well. I would appreciate it because it's different than what we were provided. And just for clarification purposes, it would help to have that.
Or at least it looks different on the screen.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been reformatted a little bit to fit the context of Zoom a little bit better, but yeah, we'll make sure we get that to you. Who does that need to be sent to?
Should we send that to Alan?
You can send it to Rhonda R. Helser, Helser, at kcgov.com, and she'll forward it out.
Great.
Thank you, Rhonda. Okay, does anybody in the audience have any questions? Steve? Speak into the mic, please.
I have just a couple of questions. So when going through the process, when you look at your staging your planning areas, are you typically going to try to kind of do some of the same things that you've done currently? For example, Win 1, Win 2. Also, you did Bridge 18, where you worked with the city and expanded the trailway through there on Bridge 18. And also with kind of the glamour, I guess we'd say, since we're open, on like Win 1 and Win 2 that kind of fit the area of Winona Lake?
We will work, obviously, and we're working with you right now with Winona Lake on another project. Yes, to meld the two, working with Melford, and Syracuse as everything works together. Obviously, knowing those individuals, knowing those communities, and being able to sit down with them and work between that and the county to get what the community wants best. So yes, obviously we would be doing that.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is I thought When you laid out the scope for Win 1 and Win 2 down in Winona, I thought that you fit the area well, like how making sure that it was, we use timber structures because of not concrete and guardrail. Those are some of the things too in planning, like to make it more pedestrian friendly, to also bring pedestrians and also industry in at the same time.
Yeah, and Corey, you might add to that too, as far as, talking to the communities and seeing what they really want, and
Yes.
how we can
Yeah.
provide that and provide those ideas of like what we did in Winona.
Yeah, I think to me, it's about context sensitivity, to use a buzzword, right? I did a lot of work at previous companies with context sensitive solutions, and it's making sure that what's proposed fits the context for the surroundings. And that really is going to come through the discussion, and you guys, whoever's involved with the committees and the conversations that we have, letting us know what you want to see, how you want to see it, and then what we recommend, and double checking and making sure that they're in alignment. I think that's the best way to answer that. I don't know what the specifics of that will look like right now, especially for a corridor like this, but that's part of the fun of what we do, really, with this type of process. So did that answer your question, or did?
He says yes.
Okay.
Hi, this is Sandy. So
Yeah.
one question, and I know you guys know this well, that we're just coming off a new comprehensive planning. Comprehensive plan about 6 months old at this point. Will you guys be looking into that and incorporating that into this study? I know I had a conversation with Alan that this won't necessarily be a addendum to the comprehensive plan necessarily. This is going to be a separate standalone document, but knowing how much went into that, I'd hate to see all that work not get integrated in some way, because I think that was really crucial with the meetings that they did have over that 1.5 year period.
Yeah, we did discuss that very briefly in our LOI. It's going to be really, really important to take a look at the county and what the county said of the comprehensive plan, but also the individual community aspects of it, because this is tying between Milford and Syracuse. So, and I think also taking a look at the initiatives that KEDCO's already got in place, and taking all of that and I like to say mash it together, and seeing what comes out of it for this corridor or for this area. So that's definitely going to be a really important component. And a lot of what I would call the heavy lifting is already for the public involvement and understanding the context. And from the previous question, has already been taken care of through that process. And I think it was what is it, 18 or 24-month process for you guys to get through that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we definitely.
It was interesting.
Definitely don't want to ignore that.
Yeah. Excellent.
Are you able to provide any assistance to KEDCO as it relates to funding sources, identifying opportunities, as well as identifying potential builders, developers, whatnot? Is that part of the process?
It can be. A lot of it depends on what direction you want to take it when we get to the final scope. We do have relationships with builders and developers to an extent, and we do a lot of the funding for various clients around the state. So I'm confident that we'll be able to help you guys package some final results that kind of weigh in what some of those options are. As you know, the funding sources are changing, especially the state funding sources and the federal funding sources are changing constantly. And even the way a lot of the private development has been happening, you're starting to see that transition to a BOT type organization when you get into development, even big development. So I think we have to have all those conversations with you and kind of see what fits, what your comfort levels, and kind of put those into the recommendations and help you kind of guide you through that. And some of it will be learning together, because like I said, especially when it comes to BOT and design, bid, build, and the different delivery ways, models that private development uses, those are evolving all the time. So,
yeah, and let me also, there are different TIFs that you guys that are out there, Melford's, Syracuse, whether the county has, and those are funding options that we would help look at for this. The build, operate, transfer is one option. Jody has a significant background in helping communities, helping counties deal with funding as well. And we have obviously, helping Kosciuszko get funding for just the extension on 1300 North through the Tracks project. And that was, several years working with Steve, with Ron Robinson at the time, and were able to get I believe it was, I forget how many $9 million, somewhere in the neighborhood of that. And you're seeing the fruits of that at this point in time.
So by those statements, you inferred that you have already formed relationships with people at the state level and federal level?
We understand the funding sources pretty well. We do know, through our work with NDOT and others, we do know people at those agencies. So there are relationships there from our previous work that we can rely on a little bit in our experience as well. And I do think it's going to be important too that you guys have done a great job and done a lot of things up there, and kind of take a look at the models that already work within the county, because a lot of that ends up being regional. When it comes to the infrastructure and the roadway and all that, that's pretty blanket and it's easier to understand. But when it comes to some of the things that you're going to want to do with economic development, a lot of that is driven regionally based on what developer interest is and what populations can support and what the different communities can support. So let's take a look at what you've been able to accomplish locally too, and start to draw some inspiration and some understanding from that.
And if I may just add, you may have been referring to specifically something like Ready. I don't know how familiar you are with that and how that's working. But that is a state-funded program, and the county has been involved with it in the past, I believe. And so, we're familiar with that. We know that there's another round coming. We know that those talks are starting now. What you guys are doing right here is a great base start to get into Ready for this. So that's just one example of economic development portion of funding.
We're actually out of time, I believe. So thank you very much for your time and your effort on this. Look forward to getting the slides that you showed, even though they may be part of this other, I couldn't make the correlation. And thank you for being with us, and someone will get back to you when we make a decision, and it may not be today. I'll just say that Alan's not here. The person who originally talked to you about this isn't here today either, unfortunately. And we're also down one other member, so, okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to share with you, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if any other questions come up, feel free to respond to the email that has the PowerPoint attached to it. We'll respond.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Can, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. Joni Truex, President of Redevelopment Commission, and serve on the County Council. We'll go around and introduce ourselves.
Doug Haynes, Vice President of the Redevelopment.
Brad Johnson,
School Board Rep.
school board member. Mike Metzger.
All right, and in the audience, we have our superintendent for the Highway Department. And we have Steve Moriarty, and we have Matt Sandy, who is, I'm sorry, we just have changed a lot of people January 1st, and I know it's already August, but it just, yeah. Anyway, I have to rethink everything here. Matt Sandy is our area development person. What is your title?
Plan director.
He's a plan director now. Okay, he was an assistant. All right, thank you. And Rhonda Helser, our auditor, is here. Marcia McSherry, our county administrator. We have press, and Lori Shipman from Kosciuszko Development Incorporated is here in place of Alan Teo today. We also have two redevelopment commission members who were not able to be here also. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, Crystal Welsh, Avid Marsh Consultants. Can I share my presentation or do you have it up in the room? Yeah, share. I heard yes. Which one?
Yes,
you want me to share? Okay, all right. I have to figure out how to do that. Where'd it go?
Yeah, you shouldn't have to change anything.
No, you should just be able to share screen on your end.
Well, the Zoom thing just went away.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Share screen. All right, now you should be able to see my presentation. Can you see that?
Yes, Hodge.
Okay, great, thank you. Welcome to everyone here. Let's start the slideshow. I am so sorry. It seems to be having a problem. Now is it moving?
It is.
All right, great, thank you. Looks like Hodge Patel and Bill Etzler from the Abbott Marsh team have also joined. Go ahead, Hodge, if you want to get started.
Sure, great. Hodge, my name's Hodge Patel. I'm the Business and Strategy Director at Abbott Marsh. John Lynn, who's our principal, he will likely be joining here, as well as Brad Mosnes, who's our Vice President. You also see on the screen Bill Etzler. He is our Business Development Director. And then, of course, Crystal Welsh, who is our Senior Urban Planner. So in June, we had an opportunity to have a preliminary discussion about this opportunity, and we are really appreciative of that. Just quick high-level stuff with Abbott Marsh. We have 11 different offices. 6 of them are in Indiana. The other 5 are in Michigan. We have 235 professionals, and for this particular project, the work will happen out of our Goshen office, where Crystal is based. From this presentation, you're going to hear about some of the projects that we have worked on and how they kind of fold into what you're looking to do in Kosciuszko County. In addition to that, you'll learn about the depth of our experience, and you'll also hear about some examples of other work that we have done. So with that, let me hand it over to Crystal, who can run through this presentation and talk about our project team as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Hodge. Yes, as Hodge mentioned, we have had some experience in Kosciuszko County, the region, and both in the state of Indiana and Michigan. The project team that we put together for this proposal is a mix of engineers, certified planners, transportation engineers, and infrastructure engineers, as well as Hodge as part of our development team, and it's going to be what we call our client champion. He's going to be your best friend through this process. What we think our strengths are relate to the fact that we have all these great services under one roof. We are a multidisciplinary team, as well as the fact that we have some really, really smart guys in our engineering department. But one of the things I tell people often is the role of a planner is to be that translator to translate for the non-engineers what the engineers are actually saying. So we think that's a really important part of our role as planners. As you see, we have worked in the area, both in Elkhart County as well as Kosciuszko County. The interesting location of this project really requires that we analyze and look at both counties, their economic development strategies, as well as their population and projections related to economic growth. So we think that's really important that we know this area, we understand that kind of the, it is impacted by both counties. We recognize the fact that you are the experts in your community. We're here to provide you technical support, best practices, talk through great opportunities and actions, but we really know that this strategy needs to be based on community efforts, community desires, and it needs to fit. It needs to be right for Kosciuszko County. It can't be right for other places. It needs to be right for you. And then, as we mentioned, we have a significant amount of experience working with developers. That's a really interesting thing about Abin-Marsh is we have experience in both public and private sectors. So when we're developing this strategy, it really will be designed to be implementable. It's something that we know developers are going to want to know. It's going to be something that will be a tool for you. It'll have beautiful graphics and great maps, but it'll be much more than that. It'll be something that will be able to be used and implemented in your community. As mentioned, we have relevant experience in projects very, very similar to this request. We're undertaking, we're in the final stages of the Goshen growth strategy that really is looking at not only internally to Goshen's current boundaries, but externally where they might grow in the future, looking at the exact same questions that you're interested in. What makes sense for us in the future? How are we going to develop? How are we going to incentivize that? How are we going to get developers to come in and invest in our community? Community Connections was a corridor study between Elkhart and St. Joe County. It was actually a project funded by the Redevelopment Commission from both counties that joined together to have that project. Again, looking at things like growth patterns and how that directly impacts the connectivity between those two counties. State Road 933 Dixie Way corridor, which is in South Bend, in the county just outside of South Bend, along Notre Dame, all the way up to Niles, Michigan. Exact same kind of things. What's the best land use there? How is it going to develop? How do we inspire and incentivize investment in the community? And then we've done 3 comprehensive master plans or comprehensive plans: North Liberty, Zanesville, and in Gainesville, Galesburg, Michigan. We've also done master planning on the private sector. We think this is an important part of what you are looking for, which is how do you make a site developable? And so we've done 4 major projects that I've been aware of, that I've been involved in. MEC Smart Park, which is the Michigan Electrical Cooperative up in Cassopolis, Michigan. They had a large 500+ acre site that they wanted to master plan. Ignition Park in the South Bend area. Cherry Creek is a mixed-use residential and commercial project here in Goshen. And then Harbor Shores is a fantastic, facility up in Michigan that's been in process for 15 years now almost. It's anchored by Jack Nicklaus Signature Golf Course. And Abin-Marsh has been critical from the inception of that project moving forward. So I'm trying to speak fast because I know we don't have a lot of time. But as we read through your RFP and as Hodge mentioned, had that initial discussion, what we thought was really important is to develop a process with 3 major deliverables. And so the way this will work is we'll want to get a committee together because we know it's so important for us to hear from the staff, the Redevelopment Commission members, local leaders. We may do focus groups with other folks that don't need to be on a steering committee, such as realtors, larger business entities, talk about their plans for growth. We're going to summarize the plans you already have. We're going to look at your utility and transportation networks. We're going to map any developmental constraints like wetlands, floodplains, brownfield sites. And then we're going to, again, talk about that demographic housing and economic development data talk about projections, what we think is going to happen, both in Elkhart and Kosciuszko County. And then we're going to establish what we call growth rates. What's a reasonable rate of growth that we think we can expect in this area? And then from that, we can help try to create some potential land use strategies around that based on real data. So as we mentioned, and then the last thing there is once we get an idea, once we get through that last phase, talk a little bit about funding and staging and implementation. So the first kind of deliverable we see is this conceptual future land use. And that would be the area that we would create the two concepts that could be a mix of agricultural uses, industrial uses, residential uses. This will all come out during those committee meetings. What makes sense? What makes sense based on need? What makes sense based on the data that we're seeing? Coming up with these concepts, what makes sense as a growth strategy? From those two, we'll meet with your committee and narrow it down to one. That one development area strategy will look something like this. It'll have land use types, how many acres we think will be viable for each type of land use, where we think that happens, identifying major corridors. And then this strategy will be what we use to go in, and Bill and his team will come in and look at actual capacity for things like your infrastructure, your utilities, your water. Which end does it make sense? Do we work from the ends towards the middle? Do we work on one side and work our way over? But this will really be an important tool to kind of outlay that future land use of this area. The plan, the future land use plan has it as agriculture at this point. So we need to kind of think through that process. I don't think we're going to suggest maybe eliminating all the agricultural uses. Kosciuszko County has a strong and important agricultural sector. We don't want to discount that. We don't want to just think as ag land is something waiting to happen. It's a viable land use, and we'll incorporate that as well. And then the last piece is once we come up with that final plan, is looking at maybe a conceptual subdivision and development plan for an area that we're going to call a priority development area. During this process, where do you think your development will occur first? That may have a lot to do with what Bill's team says of where the utilities might be available, and actually coming in and doing a conceptual subdivision of that area. I am not sure. Can someone let me know how long this has been? I don't want to overdo, and we want to leave plenty of time for questions.
Roughly about 10 minutes left.
Okay, we can go into a little bit more about why we think you should choose Avonmarsh, but again, I do want to make sure that we've got plenty of time for your questions. So cut me off when you think you've heard enough. But why we think you should choose Avonmarsh is because we have this great interdisciplinary team. We have expertise in doing plans and studies such as this, and we understand that the plan and study that ultimately will result from these efforts has to be community-based. It has to be something that makes sense for you and your goals and your vision for yourself. We think we have really strong relationships with communities. When we get to know a community and a community gets to know us, we tend to have repeat customers. We tend to build strong relationships with our communities. And so we've got a couple of those. Goshen, as we mentioned before, we've done several studies, not only studies and plans, but also infrastructure and actual construction management work with them. We also have a great relationship with New Buffalo, City of New Buffalo. Again, done multiple plans. I think when communities see our products and our results, they're happy and they come back and ask for us to help them again. We hope that's the relationship we can build with Kosciuszko County. St. Joe and Benton Harbor, as we mentioned, we've got a lot of years of experience in projects in that area as well. And then South Haven as well. Lots of great both public and private partnerships in that community. The other thing we think we bring to the table, because we do both work on public and private projects, is a clear understanding of how those two work together and how both the developer and a community can benefit from a public-private partnership. both in all kinds of housing, commercial, industrial, all kinds of different projects. As we mentioned, we have done the master planning for the Ignition Park project in South Bend. The MEC Smart Park project, again, this is a large master plan process for Cassopolis, Michigan. It's mixed use commercial and industrial. And that involves subdivision and rezoning processes that were needed for that property as well. Again, Harbor Shores and Benton Harbor. This is another great project that Abbott Marsh has been involved in. Lots and lots of complicated pieces for this, but it is a beautiful place, and we're proud to have been part of it. And that is the end of my slideshow. So we are available for questions if you want to talk about scope, if you want to talk a little bit more about us.
Right now, I'd like to open it up to any members of the audience that have questions. We'll start there.
Hi, Crystal. This is Matt
Hi.
Sandy.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Not too bad. So I asked the same question before. We just got done with a pretty extensive comprehensive planning process, not just for the county, but both municipalities on both ends of this study area. So obviously that, we don't want to see something that may create conflict there. So will you guys be pulling that in, and how will that be integrated? And
absolutely. The very first thing that we're going to do is I've already looked at the comprehensive plan because I knew this was going to be very, very important. We don't want to overrule or discount the work that was done in the plan. But again, as you know, a comprehensive plan is done at this like 40,000 feet effort. As we kind of narrow down into looking at this smaller area, this 1,000 acres of your community, then by the nature of that plan, it is going to be more detailed, and we'll have the opportunity, the time, and the ability to really focus in much more on this area than you were able to do on a comprehensive plan level. But no, the basis of this strategy will be that comprehensive plan, as well as the redevelopment commission plans that are available for in both of those TIF districts. Those will be really, really important as we look as baseline information, not only because it's great information, but we also are very aware of acknowledging and reinforcing the work that was done by the community. We don't want to throw that baby out with the bathwater kind of scenario. You really want to work thinking of this as the next step to that comprehensive plan, not to replace it.
Dave, did you have a question?
You mentioned in your presentation talking about transportation. Did you look at the road system, or is there something that you would use that would benefit your plan that's already existing, or would something be done in the future?
Well, I can let Bill chime in on that, but from a planner's perspective, what we'll do is we'll map your existing transportation network, both if there's trails or pedestrian connectivity, as well as your main highway and road system. From that will help us. It's more to have information on both ends. What's possible? So what kinds of development are reasonable based on your current system? But then if we come up with some really great ideas, what kind of impact will those development recommendations or strategies have on your transportation network? And what kind of modifications might be needed at the end of the day to be able to accomplish that? So absolutely looking what you already have, not necessarily forcing or requiring changes. That will all come through this committee. What do they think is a reasonable amount of growth? And if they think the road network cannot be modified, then that'll be a constraint. That'll be something we need to work within as we're developing this strategy. And I'm hopeful that you'll be part of this group so that you can help guide those decisions.
Hi, this is Lori from KEDCO.
Hi, Lori.
Hi. Hey, I was really glad to see some of the projects that you included looked like they were maybe placed in more of a rural area as opposed to like a downtown revitalization type study. I'm curious, what types of unique challenges that maybe that presented in those projects and how you overcame those.
Well, I think one of the main issues, this one I'm referring to the County Connections project, which is that rural area between Elkhart and St. Joe County along it went from County Road 6 down to Lincoln Way. So it was a fairly large area in both, Elkhart and St. Joe County. And the idea is there's so much traffic going back and forth, very similar, I assume, to what Kosciuszko and Elkhart County is in your area. There's so much traffic going back and forth. How do we facilitate that process? But one of the things that came up very early on was the community really wanted to preserve the character of rural residential and agricultural, but mix that in a positive and meaningful way with industrial and job creation opportunities. So it really is a bit of a tightrope walk because we wanted to make sure that people saw it as a value add. We're not taking anything away from you. We're adding to what you have available. And working through those processes so that people felt comfortable that we weren't forcing anything on them, that these were recommendations and thoughts that based on the steering committee, public engagement, and demographic and economic data, we thought were reasonable growth projections. And these were areas that would see those, most likely to see that growth occur, but in a way that is consistent with the character of the folks that are already there. We're not dealing in a vacuum. This isn't just a pretty map. You have to take into consideration the people who are already there and the people who will be impacted by the decisions that happen, whether it's on somebody else's private property or a public decision. We have to be very conscious of how that impacts the people that are already in the area.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions in the audience? Okay. Redevelopment Commission members, questions?
Well, I think you've answered the question that I was going to ask. I appreciated you recognize the significance of our agricultural community and that the concerted effort that's made to work with the stakeholders and the different potential land uses. And so that's what I was just going to ask is, how do you manage that narrative? How do you help bridge that gap? There's of course, the NIMBY's not in my backyard. So anything that you could speak to that issue, just how you can assist in that process.
Yeah, I think having conversations is really important. I think the other thing to stress is we're doing a project like this is it's not a 2-year project. This development strategy is really intended to be a long-term strategy for the area. And that even though they may see significant development shown in this plan, that we in the implementation section really clearly identify that it's going to come online as development occurs. There's no intention of mass eminent domain by the county or any other entity or any city to come in and take anybody's land, force them off their properties, specifically for agricultural uses. That there might be ways to talk to them about their future plans. Unfortunately, there's a lot of farmers who are older and retiring, and they don't have family that are interested in taking on farming when they're gone. And so talking to them about life estates and maybe looking even at things like options to purchase after they have decided to stop farming, as opposed to forcing them, letting them finish out their cycle, their life cycle, and then allowing a development to occur when that's right for them, right for the property owner. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to have that conversation and be a partner, and again, a value add as opposed to a taker and in a dictator kind of process, but really looking at what's possible and what they have. There are a lot of farmers again who don't have anybody to take up the reins when they no longer can farm the land. And so maybe this is actually something that they'd be very interested in. Again, this also will have to do with public infrastructure, utilities, and roadways, what makes sense there, how that can be incorporated into long-term capital planning, if and when necessary for those expansions. So I believe that this, in my mind, the strategy is something that you're going to carry with you for the next 10, 20 years. And hopefully at the end of that, you'll have a really great project, but it will have been done in a way and in time frame that the community feels comfortable with.
Crystal, let me add one thing. I have owned farm ground in St. Joseph County probably for over 20 years. I'm a voting member of the Indiana Farm Bureau, and when I worked in the U.S. House and U.S. Senate, my former bosses sat on the House and Senate Agriculture Committee. So I have extensive experience in terms of communicating and engaging in the agriculture community, whether it is on the grain side or whether it's hogs or cattle, whatever it may be. And so I think some of that skill set will come in helpful, will prove to be helpful, in this dialogue as we start to move forward.
And
Thanks, Hutch.
remind me what your name is. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Sorry, Haj Patel. I'm the Business and Government Strategy Director at Abner Marsh.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, we used to do, completely off subject here, we would do meetings in the courthouse in the room that you're in, and we would meet with constituents on a monthly basis. So great space that you have there.
Oh,
Thank you. It's beautiful. Who did you work for? Can you tell me?
Yeah, several people. I worked for Congressman Tim Romer, U.S. Senator Evan Bayh, and Senator Joe Donnelly.
Okay. Just curious. Thank you for sharing that. All right. And then one thing that piqued my interest when you were showing through the slides, you mentioned beers. Do you have a relationship with people in our community currently? Would you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, actually, I believe adjacent to or within the study areas is the Beers property, and we've worked with the Beers family not only on property in Kosciuszko but also Elkhart County. We have a long relationship with the company, and I believe Hodge or Bill. I personally worked on the Aluminum Insights project in Syracuse. As well. So very familiar with that area. That's where I met Matt for the first time. And so those are my personal ties to the community.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate all of the time that you've spent on your proposal and here with us today. And someone will get back to you when the Redevelopment Commission has made a decision. Alan's not here, and we also are down 2 members. So I'm not sure exactly when we will make a decision, but someone will get in touch with you. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you
so much.
Okay, I would like to just hear what people are thinking. I mean, we all sat through the 2 proposals. Does anybody have anything that they want to share about how they feel about one or the other, or if we should even be tackling this project, I guess, is the 3 choices that I can see. Go ahead. Please.
I apologize, I missed the original meeting, so what is I understand that we're looking at redevelopment in existing TIF areas, as I'm understanding it. Are we looking at industrial, residential, commercial, or combination of the 3?
Combination.
Combination of the 3, okay.
Well, and again, I think the point is they want to determine what is the highest and best use of that proposed area. So I believe it's large enough and unique enough that it would encompass probably all 3, but that's what the study would determine. And again, Laura, you can speak on behalf of KEDCO, but the idea, and I believe County Commissioner Kerry Groninger last at our last meeting was saying that we want to be strategic, and we want to be able to create what would prove to be shovel-ready sites, so that if there are interested developers, whether they be commercial, industrial, or residential, that we have a property that we can provide to them that is shovel-ready, which currently we don't have shovel-ready sites in the county.
We do.
We do. Of this nature, this size?
No, it's Warsaw.
Yeah, Warsaw, yeah.
It's not the county.
In
Yeah.
city limits.
Yeah, yeah. So yes, it could encompass all three, and I'm certain that it would, given the scope of the area.
Okay. Do you guys want to share anything, or, I know it's difficult because it's a public meeting and we're being recorded, I know
No.
that, but.
I have no problem with it, because I guess, coming into it too, I would kind of like you, not knowing the full scope and what the end goal was. I know I talked to Alan. From the planning side of things, we can look at it as, and I was alluding to it with him, as an addendum to the comprehensive plan. And she said it perfect, that the comprehensive plan is that overview. This is really dialing down to a specific area. How do you want to see that developed? And I, getting to the shovel-ready part, I think you could take the plan and do a couple different things with it. The best example I'd have would be 30 West. Back in the 80s, when they made that an industrial corridor, they went in. I mean, if you could go to that full extent if you wanted to, and through the planning, through the commissioners, actually rezone it, get it prepped for that. Now, it doesn't have to be. So I think that depends on what the end goal of the Redevelopment Commission wants that to be. I can see just from both presentations, definitely taking the step to make it an addendum to the comprehensive plan. I think that would be a good goal if you would move forward with it, because then it's set out in that plan, and that helps drives our decisions for planning and zoning. And, you know, when that rezoning comes in, yeah, that's been identified as that. You know, they're gonna have a lot of natural features to work around and figure that out too. You know, ultimate decisions to you guys on which company feels best. There's pros and cons of both, just sitting through it, making my own notes, but that's your guys, so,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Steve? I know this is really hard.
But we're just us, right? It's not them.
We're recording, it's a public meeting, it has to be
Okay,
recorded.
so with the 1300 North overpass, it started back in 2013. It was a major endeavor to try to get that corridor open. I would like to see that as one of the frame pieces of why we're working on this, because it is a major deal. Before that, we up and improved 175 East and up to True Point, improved all those intersections. And we're also got ARPA money to improve 1300 North to really open that up. And for transportation wise, it's a great achievement, I think, for our county to bring in more industry and more jobs in the community and more opportunities for growth. So I would like to see just a little bit more emphasis maybe using that, right? And there was a couple paragraphs there in that. But I like the fact of their structure and being willing to expand upon what we've got. And they said they'd work with us. You know, I thought that was a great answer. USI, the one lady that spoke at the end about funding, she has also found money for us for paint striping section. She was also the designer on the 300 East intersection that we are going to improve in 1300 North. She came from another company, DLZ, and then she moved into USI. In fact, last week was her first week. I just haven't seen the company that just went. I don't want to say their name because I'm afraid I'll screw it up. What they said, they seemed very professional. I've just seen what USI has done. And I feel that they're very professional as well. And I encourage you to take a look at Winona and the attention to detail that they did on both of those bridges, and concerning the pedestrian and the walkway that they have through Winona, tying both of those bridges in, and also on Winona Beach using the timber trails. They also worked with the city of Warsaw on the extension of the sidewalk and going through over on Bridge 18 by Walmart. So those are the things I've seen their work, but I like them too. But that's my whole thing is use 1300 North. That's what it's built for, you know?
And I appreciate your comments, I really do. One of the things that I can say objectively is that the presentation portion and what we were provided in advance is far superior on one side than the other, which surprises me. But some people aren't good communicators, and they don't understand how big of a role marketing plays in decisions. Doesn't necessarily mean anything further than surface, but first impressions sometimes do count for something. Okay, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to add, so you said that the 1300 overpass, that was approved back in 2013?
It was first designed back then.
First design?
We've got turned down 5 different times. Last time successful, Marcia and I got federal aid money. Brad Jackson, we went down and got federal aid money, but we tried 5 other times and didn't get it, so.
So it's been a 10-year process?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's, so I'm going to, it's more of a comment at this point than a question. It's just the reminder that whatever we do is not, I think Crystal said it well from Abin Marsh, right? That this is a long-term and that nothing's going to happen overnight. And that if we don't start something now, that it'll be another 10 years or another 20 years before we actually do something. I was just speaking to a community stakeholder over lunch, just saying that if we are not strategic and provide opportunities like this, we're going to continue to have sprawl. And that impacts our agricultural community. It impacts our service providers, the streets, and so forth. If we're not strategic and confine our growth to where we want it, it puts more pressures, more costs on the county, and again, is going to impact our agricultural community in probably unforeseen ways, whereas if we can be more strategic, so I'm really trying to push for I think we need to move forward with a decision, because I think the community will benefit from an intentional strategic effort to create something like this in the northern part of the county. So, but I would assume that there would be broad agreement that this is all going to take years to come to fruition. And so I think there's concern about the initial impression or acceptance in the community, and yet we need to start if we are going to be strategic. And so I love the fact that area plan is here, because that's the whole intent here, is to be intentional and plan. So, yeah.
And the other part too is, you're right, most of us won't be sitting at this table when this comes to fruition. But, okay, at least I hope I'm not sitting at this table. There are warmer climates in Indiana, people, I'm just saying. Every winter I think, why do we live in Indiana? Anyway, okay, and I do agree that we need to make a decision. My hesitation is just, do we have everything we need to make that decision? I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I really appreciated the fact that they took the time to go look at our comprehensive plan. It wasn't a surprise to them that we had one. That meant a lot to me, just in that. There is a price difference between the two, which is something, as a frugal person, needs to be considered. I mean,
yeah, I would, could I ask you to rephrase that? I don't think it's a matter of being frugal. I think it's a matter of being a steward, right?
Thank you.
And what we're after is value, right?
Right.
Because we want the best finished product for the best price.
Okay. I don't think anybody opposes moving forward. The problem is going to be, how are we going to make the decision on which company to go forward with?
Yeah, you asked the question, do we have everything that we need? Are you aware of anything that we're lacking? And I don't open it up to Mike and Dave. I mean, I know you're coming into this.
As a non-voting member, I love the idea of strategic planning and putting the infrastructure in place, because that is how you attract business, commercial, and residential developers. Because without that, you really don't have anything to look for specifically. So I think it's a great idea to designate an area, develop that area, prep it for that. It's the reason why the Golden Triangle down south works so well. As far as frugal and which is the better choice. I don't know much about either one of these companies. I have not done much in the way of city or county planning, so I can't really give any advice on that, but there is about a 50% difference between the two on total cost, and I get that, but, you know, I don't know what you're paying for with Aben Marsh compared to
USI.
USI. I don't know if there's state and federal connections on one and not the other, or it's just a difference in size and philosophy and overhead, but, you know, I can't make that decision for you, but.
Yeah. Did you see this? Did you guys see this single page?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Yeah. So it does list the various steps and information processes that they would use, and then, of course, the respective costs at the bottom. So, you know, again, you have to put a price tag on.
Yeah, that number for USI is different than what they have on their sheet here. That's why I was saying 50%.
Yes.
Okay, so
What-
there's a difference of,
They asked him to rework. The original that came in was a little, included some things I don't think were necessary, so they went back to them.
You're talking about the
Alan.
Evan Marsh came down, or you're saying USI went
No.
up? What are you saying?
The original USI was more in-depth, I believe. It was,
yeah, the original, or this, I should say, this proposal here has 48,200 in it, where this sheet's
Okay.
listing at 57,700.
I think they were trying to get it apples to apples.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But I
Lori's agreeing with that.
believe it was Evan Marsh that we were trying to narrow their scope.
Right,
And so I believe their original costs came down.
yes.
So,
One came up, one went down. It's interesting.
The timeframe of the two projects are quite a variation too, though,
if you read
It is.
if you,
based upon this sheet from Kedco. Saying 330 days to final presentation,
180 days
180 for
for final presentation from USI.
USI.
Yeah. I think, you know, that they did say if, you know, if time was essential, then they could modify either organization. But also, again, if you're looking at that page provided, some of the distinctives, there's more being done by the one that is taking longer. So if we said, well, that's not as important, you know, they might be able to reframe that. But I wanted to confirm on their presentation. I didn't highlight it. So yeah, so 48.2. Lori, do you know, because again, in the presentation that was provided by USI, it's 48.2. So do you know where you arrived at your number? Was that the original?
My guess is that that is the original.
Okay,
If
so-
that didn't just come to you in the last 2 or 3 days, then that was probably based on the original.
Okay. Okay, so then there is a much more considerable difference in cost. This summary sheet, it's, you know, a bit more negligible, but, or not as, not nearly the difference, but, okay. Would you want to delay until we had a full commission? So we're still scheduled to meet next month. 13th of September, okay, 14th, so about 30 days roughly.
I'm not trying to put you on the hot seat, but I don't recall what our TIF balance is in this. Do you know?
Yeah, we had excess.
We have
Yeah,
plenty of
yeah,
money, okay.
yeah.
That would be a consideration.
Oh, absolutely.
The other thing, in all seriousness, are we going to work with these people, whoever has decided, yes, but not as much as you guys are? And I mean, I think it's very valuable for you to, if you have a strong feeling one way or the other, even if you reach out to us independently and let us know that and why. That would help me in making that decision, because I feel like we're making a decision that's going to affect a lot of people, not just the people in this room. And, you know, I'm really curious what the tie-in with the beer and the beer is. I really am. Are they landowners here? Is this their land? I don't know. You know?
So his dad lives in the lot right there. He used to live with his family. He was raised, obviously, all the beers were.
Okay.
Uncle across the road.
Yeah.
So his uncle owns on the north side, the farm, they raise dogs.
But they're not involved at all in any of this property that we're talking about. That's very important.
It's all within that quarter.
It is within the quarter, okay. And that's something that we would have to consider too, because we can't do anything that appears or would be perceived as doing something that favors someone who's already here and is going to benefit financially.
They don't own it.
They don't own anything here. It's their relatives own it. Okay, that's important to me, to know that distinction.
Yeah, no, that's valid. I mean, I was impressed with the number of stakeholders that USI has worked with. And again, I think it's good that there's specific ties to our county, and that's a good thing, but we do absolutely need to make sure there's not a conflict of interest. But I don't, based on the comments, I don't,
There was no conflict
yeah.
when I did the 1300 North overpass. They're the original designers of it.
I'm just trying to cover all the bases, because those kind of things come back. Even if you have nothing to do with it, if you have the same name, you get credit. I can speak to that. Yes, considering how many times people have married me off to the wrong man. Anyway.
So just a couple of questions. Lori, are you aware of any timing issues that the Redevelopment Commission needs to be aware of as it relates to this decision relative to this project? The other is there anything that we're going to learn between now and, you said September 13th, 14th? 14th? So is there any information that we're going to learn from either of the parties between now and the 14th that we don't already know?
I don't think you're under any timeline restrictions. And I also don't think you're going to get any additional information that's going to change what you heard here today, unless
Right.
folks have something else that they wanted to add after they thought about it for a minute. But KEDCO is going to support your decision, and we're going to help you move your project forward. And I really agree with everything you're saying about planning. Plan, so it doesn't just happen to you and you react. And so this is a really great way to do that. I think you have two really good companies here. You have two really good proposals. I think they have a little bit different approaches as well as experiences. So definitely I would weigh and consider those. But as far as Alan is concerned and I'm concerned, we're not over here like tapping our toe, but I do know, it's a good time to get started.
So I would like to make a request then of KEDCO is, would you
Yeah.
revisit this, confirm
Yes.
with both?
Can I have that?
Confirm with Abin Marsh as well as USI, total cost, any contingencies, any, extras, overruns, so that we actually have the true final figure, yep, and then submit that back to the Redevelopment Commission so we can give it to all members. And then, I don't know that a motion is needed, but if there is, I'm going to make a motion that we table it until September
14.
14th. Thank you.
But we'll make a final decision on September 14th.
And we will make a final
Okay.
decision, yeah. Yep.
Perfect.
Do I have a second?
Could I say something before?
Absolutely.
I've been pretty quiet here.
You
For me, I
have.
haven't said anything. But to me, it's whoever has, and you listening to what you two talked about, whoever has experience in the transportation part of it, or the highway part of it. I won't go off of my little agenda, but there's a lot of things lacking in this county as far as the way that the traffic patterns are. I would like to see someone that actually knows what they're doing kind of lay it out so we actually have things big enough for semis. I mean, we have several hundred loads that pass from 1,300 down 15 in different areas. So maybe it's selfishness, but we need, if we're going to expand and do all the things, I love Alan, he's an Energizer bunny, and then on KidCo, we're going to double up and triple up everything, but you got to have a highway, you got to be able to get across the railroad tracks, and there are things you have to do. So I would certainly lean towards whoever that you think, and you could talk to me at some time, not here, your experience you've had, if you know more one than the other, because 1,300, there's a lot of stuff on that road, all the way across to Hollywood, and it just keeps increasing there. And so I would like to see it being done correctly as far as interchanges or roundabouts or whatever we might be talking about there. So that would be my take on it.
So there are things we can learn between now and September 14th, and I do believe there are. In fact, I would like to have a conversation with each of you independently and would encourage you to reach out to the other redevelopment commission members to discuss this. Because I think that's vitally important that we make the best decision for all of the people involved, because no matter what you're talking about, when ag and farmland is involved, you have a lot of very strong opinions. And, you know, we own ground, we farm. And, you know, it's just a very personal thing. So I think we really need to do our homework. But do I have a second to the motion to table?
I second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay, thank you. It's tabled. We'll make a final decision September 14th. Rhonda, if you could give me the two contacts for these, or would KEDCO want to handle that? Would you let them know would you do that? Let them know we'll make a final decision on September 14th and notify both companies, you know, within a few days of that. That would be very helpful, Lori. Okay, thank you all very, very much. Is there any other business to come before the commission? Okay, if not, motion to adjourn. Second? That's you?
Second.
All those in favor, get up and leave. Thank you.
You're pretty glad I came today, aren't you? So I could second that for you.